Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our 2013 NFL team preview. We're taking a look at the New Orleans Saints. We're going to break down their offense, their defense, as well as their special teams to see what we can expect from the Saints this upcoming season.
Drew Brees is entering his 13th season in the NFL and has put together a Hall of Fame career. Over the course of his time with the Saints, Brees has thrown for almost 34,000 yards and 244 touchdowns. He's a true field general that will always have the Saints in contention. The only critique I have about Brees' game is that at times he tends to press and force the issue, which could lead to him tossing interceptions sometimes at the worst moments of a game. And they tend to come in bunches. If he starts off the game throwing one, it could be a 4-interception game for Brees. Sometimes he forgets that he's an athletic guy and there's nothing wrong with taking those cheap 3 to 4 yards on a scramble or throwing the football away. The only question I have about this position is the backup quarterback spot. Gone is Chase Daniel, who's an excellent fit for the Saints offense and had a lot of Drew Brees-like characteristics. Now in comes the battle between Luke McCown and Seneca Wallace. I would say Wallace is the better of the two, so I would go with him as the number 2 guy. Point being, Drew Brees can't afford to get injured, otherwise the Saints are in trouble. Here's the thing about running backs. If you don't get consistent carries, it's tough for you to get into a groove as a runner. That's the biggest issue with Mark Ingram. His production is not due to a lack of talent, it's due to the lack of opportunity. The great thing about Sean Payton getting suspended last season was the fact that he got to sit and watch his team from afar to see what is needed. And that's what's needed, a more balanced offense that utilizes the position that is the biggest strength on your offense to your advantage. And honestly, any one of the Saints backs can get the job done if they're given the touches and all bring something unique to the table. Darren Sproles is the most explosive out of the group. Pierre Thomas is the most consistent, and Ingram has the better all-around talent as a pure runner. They lose Chris Ivory in the offseason, but Tavares Cadet is more than capable enough to fill his shoes and can also help out on special teams. For the first time since 2007, I believe the Saints have some questions at the receiver position. Now, there's no questioning the 2 starters in Marcus Colston, who's coming off his 4th consecutive 1,000-yard season and his 6th out of the last 7 years, and Lance Moore, who is as dependable as you can get, especially on third downs. He also went over 1,000 yards. The question is with the depth. Gone is Devery Henderson, who was the team's most consistent deep threat, and they're going to hope that 2013 rookie draft pick Kenny Stills out of Oklahoma, Joe Morgan, Andy Tanner, and Chris Givens will compete for that role. While all of those guys are speedy, I don't see the consistency as of yet. Nick Toon spent last season as his redshirt year to get healthy. He's a bigger version of Lance Moore. Toon has very good hands and can either play in the slot or on the outside. When the Saints were at their best, their third wide receiver was a person that you had the game plan for. Whether it was Moore, Henderson, or Meacham, you had to respect their skills. Right now, I don't see that, and that's why I have a question about the wide receiver position. The tight end spot is also very strong with Jimmy Graham, who's one of the better tight ends in the game and is a matchup nightmare for any defense. His versatility allows him to be flexed as a tight end and flanked as a wide receiver. The Saints also bring in Benjamin Watson from the Cleveland Browns as a second tight end. He's a viable option and could give them more flexibility in the running game, as they can utilize him as an H-back in certain situations. The biggest loss for the offensive line wasn't Jamon Bushrod, it was O-line coach Aaron Kromer, who's now with the Chicago Bears. The Saints will look to Frank Smith, who's been with the team for the last 4 seasons, to continue the tradition of good O-line play under Sean Payton. The Saints are solid on the interior, which is the most important part of the Saints offensive line, with perennial All-Pro Jairi Evans at the guard spot. He has posted 4 consecutive Pro Bowl seasons and is one of the best guards in the league. Ben Grubbs had some mixed reviews last season, but got better as the season progressed, and Brian De La Puente has been a pretty good center since taking over for Olin Kreutz a couple of seasons ago. On the edges, we mentioned that they lose left tackle Jamon Bushrod to free agency, and there's going to be a battle between former 2010 second-round pick Charles Brown and this year's second-round pick Teron Armstead. Brown hasn't produced much in his career because of injury, so the jury is still out on him whether or not he can be a productive player. Armstead is athletically gifted and could give the Saints a little bit more flexibility in their offense with play calling, getting him on the move. The right tackle spot will be held by Zach Strief, as he'll try to hold off former first-round pick Jason Smith, who's looking to resurrect his once promising career. And there's some quality depth options with Eric Olsen, who can play both guard and center, Ricky Henry, and also Andrew Tiller. 2 years ago, when I stated the Saints have the personnel for the 3-4 defense and should make that switch, I was mocked. Now the Saints are making that switch to the 3-4 with new defensive coordinator Rob Ryan, and they are prepared up front to make that move. Coming out of the 2011 draft, I said Cameron Jordan, while talented, is a better fit as a 5 technique, and now he gets that opportunity and should excel in that role because of his ability to hold his own at the point of attack while getting penetration. In my opinion, the other 5 tech spot should be held by Will Smith, but they're playing him as an outside linebacker, so it looks like it'll be last year's 3rd round pick Akeem Hicks getting the starting nod at that position. Hicks showed flashes last season and could even line up at the nose in certain situations. And speaking of the nose tackle position, in the draft, the Saints selected John Jenkins out of Georgia to be the starter. Jenkins held that role in college and did a sound job throughout the course of his career. And we look at depth behind these guys along this front 3, be Broderick Bunkley, Tom Johnson, and free agent signing from Dallas, Kenyon Coleman. This is where the lifeblood of any 3-4 defenses lie. You have to have the ability to apply pressure from the outside. Last season, the Saints had potential edge rushers sitting on the bench at Martez Wilson and Junior Gillette. Both guys will step into roles as outside linebackers and should do a fine job getting to the quarterback. Gillette is more of your classic pass rusher, while Wilson does have the ability to drop back into coverage and also the versatility to play on the inside. And I want you to keep an eye on 2 rookies as well, and Rufus Johnson out of Tarleton State and Chase Thomas out of Stanford. Thomas was a guy that I had a 3rd round grade on, and he went undrafted, so that's a huge steal for the Saints. Will Smith should do a fine job as a contained defender as he excels in stopping the run. The question is, can he consistently get pressure on a quarterback? His production over the years suggests he's more of a 5 technique than an outside backer. On the inside, there's Curtis Lofton, who led the team in tackles with 123. He'll likely be lined up next to either David Hawthorne or Jonathan Vilma. Hawthorne would more than likely get the nod, and Vilma would more than likely be a part of sub packages. Keep an eye on undrafted rookie free agent Kevin Reddick out of North Carolina, who was another highly touted player, and Chris Chamberlain, who missed all of last season with an ACL injury. In the secondary is where the Saints had most of their problems last season. They couldn't stop anyone from throwing the football, so that's why in the offseason you go out and sign free agent Keenan Lewis of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who excels in press coverage. You still have Jabari Greer. You have young guys in Corey White and Ryan Steed to compete with Patrick Robinson for that 3rd or 4th cornerback spot. They still have some slight question marks, but those guys look a lot better than what they did last season. And also keep an eye on undrafted rookie free agent Rod Sweeting out of Georgia Tech, a guy that has ball skills and can also help out on special teams. Now moving to the safety spot, the big addition was 1st round draft pick Kenny Vaccaro out of Texas. Here's a guy that shows tremendous range from sideline to sideline, can play free safety or strong safety, and can also line up in the slot and match up well versus tight ends and wide receivers. This allows you to be more flexible in your defense, and this was a huge pick for the Saints. Malcolm Jenkins will be the incumbent free safety, and that pushes guys like Raphael Bush and Roman Harper to back up jobs. When you look at Roman Harper, I think this still is a guy that has some value on this team. Maybe as an outside rusher, maybe you can get creative in your packages, sometimes go to a 3-5 look or a 3-3-5 look with him as one of the linebackers. He's one of the better run defenders. Now you get him in space, in trouble, but you put him close to that line of scrimmage, he's definitely a guy that can make plays. The Saints also made a good pickup in free agency with Jim Leonard, and they still have Issa Abdul-Kados on the roster. Him and Raphael Bush last year played fine. They actually look like 2 capable safeties, so you still have depth, you have talent now, you have an upgrade with Kenny Vaccaro, so you still have to take a wait-and-see approach with this unit because that word potential will get thrown around, but this is definitely an upgrade over last year's secondary. The Saints are set in their special teams department. I'm a big fan of Garrett Hartley and what he has done throughout the course of his Saints career. Thomas Morstead is one of the better punters in the game, has a huge leg, and does a great job in killing punts inside the 20. They're fine at the return spot with Darren Sproles and Travaris Cadet. The biggest question about the Saints special teams is the coverage units. They have to do a better job with their kickoff coverage and their punt coverage. So if they can improve that, this will be a very good special teams unit. But right now, they're pretty decent. Now let's take a look at what the Saints have on this roster. Number 1, a future Hall of Fame quarterback with a great coach. That's an excellent combination to have. And they have depth, talent, and versatility at the running back position. We talked about that earlier. And 3rd, I think they have underrated front 7 talent on defense. We'll see that showcase in this 3-4 defense. Now let's take a look at what the Saints lack. Number 1, a proven secondary. Remember, potential is there, but they haven't proven it yet. They don't have a stud left tackle. They're depending on Charles Brown and a rookie Teron Armstead. In continuity with this new defensive scheme, that's something that they lack as well going into the 2013 season. Reason for optimism for the Saints is that they get back Sean Payton, and he's going to bring that stability back to the sideline, a guy that's a great in-game coach. And despite having a worse defense known to man last season, the Saints still finished 7-9 with a chance to make the playoffs. So a little bit of improvement on defense, and this is a team that can do some damage. The cause for concern for the Saints will be if the defense takes a long time to adjust to the new scheme and if the secondary still has problems. Plus, if they're not able to get off to a good start, this is a division that's going to be very tough this year with Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Carolina, so the Saints can't afford a slow start by their defense. The road to the Super Bowl for New Orleans goes as follows. Number one, the defense just has to get to average. It can't be the worst defense. When you look back in 2009, the defense was about middle of the pack. They did a good job in creating turnovers, and that's what they have to get back to. Number two, Peyton has to go back to the balance of 2009 when he was able to run the football, and the Saints had one of the top 5 rushing attacks in the league. And third, they're going to need a third receiver to develop as a constant threat, a guy that defenses have to account for in order for this offense to get back to what it was in 2009. I have the Saints finishing first in the NFC South. I think they have on offense enough already. They can average 30 points a game. They can run the football when they want to. They can throw it when they want to. Defensively, I think they've added enough pieces to go from being one of the worst to at least being average, and that's all they need to get back into the playoffs and make some noise. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Saint fan forums for always showing football game plan support.